This is Innovate and Overcome. I'm Richard Canfield, and today we're diving into the real stories behind extraordinary success right here on NowMedia Television. Welcome back to Innovate and Overcome. I'm your host, Richard Canfield. Joining us today is Ryan Herpin. He's the co-founder and the managing partner of Impact Strategies Consulting. Now, he's also the host of an incredible show here on NowMedia called The Bottom Line. Ryan helps companies streamline systems, boost profits, and elevate leadership teams through practical, high-impact strategies. He works closely with executives to drive employee engagement, we're going to talk about that today, and long-term growth, all while trying to keep work-life balance in focus. Now, we're diving into strategies and mindset shifts today that could truly transform how you lead and grow. Ryan, thanks for being with us today. Let's dive right in. Now, there's a problem that many of our viewers may recognize, that the constant struggle between balancing the business life and the personal life. There's a feeling of being constantly overwhelmed, and there's a huge risk of missing out on those really critical, important family moments. So I'd love to hear from you. What are the signs that really indicate that an entrepreneur is heading towards burnout?
That's a really good question. And it's one that I feel like a lot of us overlook. I would say one of the biggest red flags is when your wins start to feel like losses. You're closing deals, hitting targets, but instead of feeling energized, you feel numb and even resentful. Other signs would include, the typical things, right? Fatigue, irritability, mental fog, and even a sense of detachment from your business and family. I think I could summarize it pretty simple. When your passion starts to turn into pressure, burnout is usually right around the corner. And the signs aren't always so obvious. It really takes the people around you to help point that out before it gets too bad.
Fascinating. And so, you talk a little bit about creating sustainable rhythm, something that's able to support both the professional side and the personal lives. I like the idea that something sustainable sounds good, and rhythm, of course, being a music fan, I always like that as well. So, walk us through what exactly does that mean in your language, and how would you explain that to a business owner?
We've always, a lot of people talk about balance, 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 balance. How do you balance life, work, all these things? It starts by understanding that balance doesn't mean equal time, it means intentional time. And for me, it goes deeper than that. Like you said, rhythm. I use a very specific rhythm framework. And to break it down, it's focus, flex, and fuel. Focus time is for deep work that's it's high value tasks, right? Flex time allows for that creativity and the adaptability. And then the fuel time is my non-negotiable time with family, faith, health, and what truly recharges me. So you got to put those things in your calendar, like client meetings or business deals, whatever it is. Because if you don't schedule your life, your business is going to automatically. So you've got to be able to have that structure in your day to day to make sure it's rhythm and not a needless effort in trying to find equal time for everything. Some days the business is going to need you more. Some days the family is going to need you more. So it's that rhythm. But I will add one thing to that framework: communication. Communication is absolutely key for the family. If you don't have clear communication, you're setting yourself up for failure.
I really appreciate that. And I think that is a critical tip. Now, communication, especially around the family, you talked about fuel time. I love the connection there. It's around the things that are essentially going to fuel they're going to drive you, and a lot of that family time, faith, etc. A lot of F's that we're using here in the context of managing our time in our life. So when you talk about prioritizing that fuel time and then linking the communication around, whether it's your spouse and family members, what's an example of where you found success doing that, where you can really get that intentional time? It might not be maybe the same volume of time, but it's very clear and concise.
For me, the best strategies I've found to really make that work is you've got to understand where your priorities really lie. What is truly important? So when I put something down on my calendar, I stick to it as if my life depends on it. So for me, family has to come first. I've never heard anybody say on their deathbed, "Oh, I wish I would have worked more. Wish I'd have closed more deals, made more money." It's always, "I wish I would have spent more time." That's always what it is. So I like to think of it as I reverse engineer my week. every weekend or Friday, Saturday. I start by kind of scheduling those personal priorities, dinner with the family, date night, you know, very intentional time with my children. Then I build the business around it. It reminds me why I work so hard in the first place, and that small shift changes everything because it's hard to feel burned out when your life outside of work is full of purpose. And having those clear cutoffs, those clear non-negotiables, lines you do not cross, makes it a whole lot easier. So you don't feel a sense of self-doubt, shame, or guilt for not focusing all on the business. When you set those non-negotiables, it gives you the freedom to say, I'm going to compartmentalize this, push this aside, and focus on this next thing. We all have the same amount of time in a day. The only difference is how we spend it. If you're on autopilot, you're going to waste it. If you're very intentional, you're going to utilize it and appreciate it.
That makes a ton of sense, and I could see the power in doing that. And sometimes there's challenges, unique challenges that come up that are very time sensitive, critical of nature in a business environment, and it can interrupt the flow of even that preciously locked in time that you've set aside. So what I think I hear, and correct me if I'm wrong, but once you've allotted that time and you've locked it in stone, if something were to interfere with it that suddenly takes a precedence, then there's a commitment level that's happened there in advance. And that commitment is, look, this time is precious. And if I'm not able to commit to it at this stage, we have to reallocate that into a future endeavor to make sure that we're making up that core intentional fuel time. Is that kind of a way that you would approach it?
Yes, inevitably, life is going to throw curveballs. Sometimes things pop up that have to take priority. It's just making sure, like I said before, communication. You've got to communicate with all parties involved. I do not pull punches when it comes to business or family. So if something has to take my time, has to take my attention, that's just what it is. Because truth is, most entrepreneurs, they get stuck working to live. Really, rather, it's more living to work. That's a better way to put it. But it's breaking that cycle and just having that understanding that sometimes things do pop up. You're going to have no choice, and you've got to handle it. But making sure you make up that time elsewhere. Find more time to correct it. So like if I have to, unfortunately, this has happened. I've had to blow off date night before. I don't like doing that, but it was something that was a very big deal for my firm. So I had to prioritize it. And to make up for the wife, I made sure our date night was above and beyond to recapture that time to essentially apologize in a way that I know would benefit us both in having that quality time. So it's the only way I've found to handle those curveballs is communicate and move forward with purpose. That's really about it.
Yeah, I love the simplicity of the focus, flex, and fuel buckets that you've identified. It reminds me to deal, and I see an overlap with what the Strategic Coach organization talks about. They talk about free days, buffer days, and focus days, and they're 24-hour periods from midnight to midnight. And one of the key elements of a free day is that they're really about recharge, and there can be no, literally zero work activity in that time frame.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that's extremely, extremely important to be able to section that out. And I like the idea of having those days separated and controlled. It definitely makes sense. I do know that sometimes schedule wouldn't necessarily permit a full day to be able to focus on one thing, but I do like the concept. But I do see one consistent problem, kind of as you've touched base on. People will try to take that intentional time off or to focus on refueling, yet they just can't refuel or they don't refuel or they have that time available and they instead fill it with something else that doesn't recharge them. That's where that burnout comes in. If you're consistently filling your recharge time with more progress in one area over the other, you're going to induce burnout. That's just how that's going to work.
Yeah, and I feel like, some people will take that time that they think is free and they'll use it with, as an example, they'll read maybe even a business book and then you'll get inspired, you'll have ideas, you want to go back and start attacking or implementing things, which is taking you completely away from the purpose of that time. And then furthermore, one of the things that it's really helped me, I know in this similar endeavor, is to have my assistant or a qualified person help to actually initiate blocking in those time frames and then help guard them for me. So empowering a teammate to be like, look, if we don't get this time, everything comes crashing down. So you need to be someone who's going to help to guard that precious time and also help me plan for it effectively.
Yeah, I call it the gatekeeper method. It's very helpful to have somebody that has your back and keeping you disciplined, lined out, and focused where you need to be focused. It's the same reason why it's good to have like a business partner or consultants. Makes sense. Sometimes you become the accountability partner for the owner of a business. Sometimes you have to become their gatekeeper of their time, the way they handle things. It is valuable, and it makes a lot of sense why we struggle to do that on our own sometimes. But that additional support I've seen make some massive differences. And when applying it to myself in my own life, it has definitely benefited me.
So to kind of recap and summarize, we have moving from balance instead into rhythm as a way to approach your time allotment, and getting really critically focused and clear on where the protected zones. I believe in the Stephen Covey model, they talk about your big rocks. So that's that fuel things, the things that drive you and fuel you're passionate about. And so, what are some of your final thoughts then on the time that you want to allot to making yourself more efficient and effective, Ryan?
I would say a final thought on this is make sure you allot time to grow yourself, to focus on yourself and invest in yourself. You cannot be the best for anyone if you're not the best for yourself first. Very important. Don't miss it.
Absolutely love that. Well, we're talking about all these incredible things with Ryan here. We're going to have so much more to cover when we come back in just a moment. We're going to talk all about moving ourselves through that growth ceiling, scaling a business, and getting breakthroughs that actually matter in your business and your structure. And I can't wait. We're just getting started. Stick around. More vision, more resilience, and more innovation coming up next on Innovate and Overcome.